You're listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set out to bring you news, interesting topics and interviews with people mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode 495. I'm your host, András Pinter, and joining me for the show is my co-host, Pontus Böckman. See ya!
Hejsan, András. Good morning to you.
Oh, yes, to you too. Actually, I should have said Guten day.
Guten day?
Yeah, because I'm in Iceland.
Oh, okay, that's how you say it.
Oh, yeah, that's how you say it. Mm-hmm. Or something similar. If someone is listening from Iceland, please forgive my butchering of the words. But it's really difficult. I'm trying, especially when you do the guiding thing and you try to name places that you visit. It's like, or something to that effect.
Yes. I know the big dairy there, it's called Mjölkur Samsalan. I know that. That's the extent of my Icelandic. People may think that Icelandic is just one of the Nordic languages, so it's easy for me to understand. It is difficult. If I see it written down and I take away the ending of every word, then I may get around. But also, they do, I think, maybe you know a bit better, but I do think that they translate all foreign new things. They translate and create new Icelandic words. They don't say computer or computerir or something like that. They translate it into something else. And that makes it harder to, it's difficult, I'm sure.
But most of them, at least more educated Icelanders, are capable of reading the old sagas from the 13th and 14th centuries without any issue.
Yeah, so progress is not a good thing. That's what you're saying. If you stay with the same language forever, then it's good.
Yeah, and by the way, getting back to the dairy product, they have a cultural dairy product, a cultured dairy product that is called skyr.
Yes.
I think it is the name, and it's all over the place. You can find it everywhere and in all kinds of different flavors. It's not bad, actually. It's pretty good.
Luckily. Since it's everywhere.
The scenery is just something that I can't get enough of. And I often compare it to the Scottish Highlands, and I think that comparison stands pretty well.
I've never been to Iceland, I realize.
You should.
I should go.
Yeah, you should. If someone is listening from the country, we are always open for invites.
Oh, yeah. And yes, if there is a big secret society of skeptics in Iceland, we haven't heard about them yet. So they're welcome to make themselves heard, and we can maybe even invite them to join EXO, the European Council of Skeptical Organizations.
Exactly.
Would be nice.
Yeah, and there's lots of folk tales, myths and mythical figures in Icelandic culture, so there's pretty good amount of stuff to deal with. So
yeah, sure.
So how have you been?
I have been fine. I have been in Lithuania. It was very, very nice. I want to say a big thank you to the Lithuanian skeptics and to Algimantas and to the others that I met there. And it was really good. If people don't know, I was invited by them. It was then paid by the Council of Nordic Ministers, which sounds very fancy. But the purpose of this was for me to take part in a panel in a big discussion festival, which is sort of a newish concept for me. But it was the big park there in Vilnius was full of, maybe it was 32 tents or something like that, with lots of discussions going on all around about politics and a lot of things. And I was there to talk in a panel about how important it is for critical thinking, especially now it's always important, of course, but when you have a lot of political threats and changes, how can we make sure that everybody has access to critical thinking? So it was me, it was a teacher, a psychologist, and another scientist, social scientist, and it was very, very good, very interesting. Fantastic weather. I had never expected that. And they didn't expect it either, really. They said, well, usually for this summer, we've had a lot of rain. We have had like maybe 20 degrees or something. But when I arrived, it was 27 and sun.
Oh, so it was you bringing over the good weather.
And it seems to be only over the weekend, and it went back again. But it means that everybody went to this discussion festival because that was the big thing that was happening that weekend. So there were loads of people, very interesting.
And where did it take place exactly? In Vilnius?
Well, I don't know the name of the park, but in the old town, or next to the old town, there is a big public park. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, is it next to the castle?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's Kalmar Parkas, I think, what it's called.
I never even bothered to ask.
It's along the Vilnia River.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
along
it
the
is.
Vilnia River. Yeah. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's a great place to hold such an event. And oh my God, Lithuania is such a beautiful city, and I haven't been there for ages. Which is a shame. Okay, but yeah, good for you. And I'm pretty sure that you made a great contribution to whatever was said on the panel.
I forgot to say that it was live streamed on Facebook, the panel, and I think you can still find it there, but also that they will edit it a little bit and then publish it somewhere. When I know where and when, I will let people know.
Oh, and definitely we will share the link, of course. Great, that sounds good. Just a wink. We like doing these, so keep inviting us to these places. Over the weekend, there was Dragon Con in the United States, and Dr. NG invited me a couple weeks back to attend a panel on somewhat of an overlook of what's going on in the world in terms of skepticism. So different skeptical organizations were represented. Laura Benham was there from Australia. Adrian Hill was there from Canada. Klaus Larsen, whom we interviewed recently, was on the panel as well. So it was all online, obviously. We weren't all there. And the funny thing was that I couldn't be there for the online discussion, so I had to record my own contribution. And I sent it over because I was already here when it was happening. So, Angie was very, very generous with that, and she said that it was fine to send a recording, so I did. And I think it will be available as well. I got some feedback already about what I had to say, because it was about what the most important challenges of the Hungarian skeptics are. And unfortunately, it had to do a lot with what's going on with the Orban regime and its state propaganda, because that is a very hard nut to crack. The feedback was that, they liked my talk, but it's a little bit disheartening.
Sometimes sometimes the truth isn't fun, but you have to talk about it.
Yes. And unfortunately, there are trends that seems to be followed by the current American administration as well. So I thought it would be important for me to share all that experience, because people might be able to learn something from it. But speaking of learning something, we always learn something when we get feedback, which we really love. And that comes with a little bit of correction or a bit of an extra information regarding what was said on the show. And this is the case with Josef's feedback that we received by email. And it was regarding our conversation last week about the evolution of green energy in Europe and how we're doing in some specific countries. And I think I made a couple of comments that were not very deeply thought out, and I was just talking off the top of my head. That often leads to a couple of nuances that don't really add up. This is what happened, apparently. And I'd like to thank Josef for that. The couple of things that he commented on was that actually nuclear energy production emits less carbon dioxide than wind and solar energy, even when accounting for building and decommissioning, which is a very good point, because the thing is that when we try to evaluate the investments in power plants, the energy required to build a power plant is less important than the energy required to build it per unit of energy that it will be able to produce. And in that comparison, nuclear plants are much, much better, because in general they emit about 5 grams of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour because of the very high energy density of the whole system, whereas wind accounts for 13 grams, so more than twice, almost 3 times that, and solar produces 23 grams per kilowatt hour. That is a good point that I didn't make, and that's important to make that distinction. The other thing that Josef pointed out was the energy mix of Sweden, because in the energy mix, there is a 31% contribution of nuclear to the whole energy mix. And that brings it down pretty significantly, that low carbon emissions, especially when it comes to per kilowatt hour comparisons.
I was surprised also that I was talking about hydropower, right?
Yeah.
And I thought it was much higher than it was. He says it's just 9%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, that's what that was my point, saying, okay, if you have all this hydropower, it's easy to keep the carbon emissions low. But if it's only 9%, maybe the effect isn't that big as I thought it was.
Yeah. And the last thing to mention here is when we're talking about energy production versus installed capacity, because those are two different things. I mean, they are related, but the annual energy production is more crucial for that comparison. For example, when it comes to nuclear power plants, they have a productivity of 75 to 95%. And they are very scalable, and that's very good. And wind turbines productivity are at about 20 to 45%, and solar power around 10% in Belgium and the Netherlands, for example. So we have to take into account all that. And I'm really sorry that I didn't go into all that detail. And I really appreciate Josef digging deeper and letting us know about that. So keep doing that, please. If we say something that is too vague or not accurate, do let us know, please. You can send us an email to info@theesp.eu. You can find us on Facebook, where you can send us a message. You can call us, but you don't know our numbers. But and let that stay that way. And you can send us a message on Patreon, especially when you're a patron of the show, which is very much appreciated if that is the case.
Yeah, so if you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/TheESP. And you will find all the instructions there, what to do and how to support us.
Yeah. And the other way you can help us is other kind of feedback. So on the platforms where podcasts are available, if you leave us a review, especially it's a positive one, that is of great help. So please do that too. But enough of asking for all kinds of help. Let us do the show. And the first part of that is usually TWISH, or This Week in Skeptical History. This week, we will be celebrating someone by the name Wilhelm Friedrich Ostwald, who was born on the 2nd of September 1853 in one of the Baltic states, Latvia, Riga. He was born to a Baltic German family, which you probably guessed by the name. And he stands as one of the most transformative figures in the history of chemistry. His groundbreaking contributions fundamentally reshaped our understanding of chemical processes and established the field of physical chemistry as a distinct scientific discipline, which is an amazing field of science. Not easy to understand. And when we learned that university, that was like a big issue for most of us, especially because of all the math involved. Oh God, that's not easy to crack. So he was, even as a young child, fascinated with science, and his childhood experiments with fireworks and photography in a makeshift home laboratory basically foreshadowed the experimental brilliance that would later revolutionize chemistry. So his formal education began at the University of Dorpat, which is now Tartu, Estonia. I don't know if you've been there. It's a gorgeous place. It basically has an atmosphere of cultural science and just beauty. Never mind. But he started his education in 1872, and he studied chemistry under Carl Schmidt and physics under Arthur von Oettingen. And he earned his doctorate in 1878 with a thesis on, and I quote, volumetric and optical chemical studies, end quote, which included pioneering work on chemical affinity. In 1887, he accepted the world's first chair of physical chemistry at Leipzig University, together with Svante Arrhenius.
Heard of him?
Yeah, your fellow Swede.
Yeah.
And Jacobus van 't Hoff. He formed what became known as the triumvirate of physical chemistry, establishing this new discipline that applied physical laws to understand chemical phenomena. Well, it wasn't that approach was not new, that physical laws were to be understood, but the approach, that experimental backing for the theories regarding chemical reactions and chemical compounds had to be applied, because otherwise it's just a mess. And this is how a lot of people who are from the field of physical chemistry, even today, tend to think that other disciplines are much less accurate because of that approach, the difference in the approach, that they think that this is the science, people. This is what tells you what's what in chemistry and chemical reactions and the backgrounds of it. So he made a very significant theoretical contribution in the form of what we currently know as the law of dilution, or Ostwald's law of dilution, as it is often referred to. He came up with that in 1888, and basically that describes the relationship between the dissociation constant that had already been worked out by then and the degree of dissociation of weak electrolytes. So when more complex ions dissociate or particles dissociate, that is a very important part of how dilution works. And when we are calculating concentrations and stuff, that's a very important law that is still used to this day. It's a very nice looking formula when you look at it, actually, especially if you understand what's in there. But this fundamental principle is absolutely essential for understanding acid-based chemistry and electrochemical processes. So when we're mentioning the latter, the electrochemical processes, obviously it's a very hot area at the moment because of all the electrolytes needed for batteries, for example, and that is important to find the right reactions, to find the best energy balances, and that has a lot to do with Ostwald's work. But his most practically significant contribution was what we call the Ostwald process. He came up with it in 1902, and it's a method for producing nitric acid through the catalytic oxidation of ammonia. You probably ask why it's important. It's because industrial chemistry was revolutionized by that, and it remains the primary method for nitric acid production today, which is essential for things like fertilizers, and occasionally we're talking about other uses for nitric acid, but that's the most important, and it's supporting global agriculture, basically. His systematic study of catalysis earned him the 1909 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. We usually think of catalysis as something that will help chemical reactions. The way they help chemical reactions is that they bring down the activation energy of a certain compound that will bring it into a chemical reaction. And that is the way it works, and that is how it's so important. He defined catalysis as, and I quote, the modification by the acting substance of the rate at which a chemical reaction occurs without that substance itself being part of the end product formed, end quote. And that's a very important part, that it doesn't really take part in the chemical reaction. It just helps the chemical reaction go the way that it will occur. The occurrence of that reaction will be much more likely because of the lowered activation energies. So it's pretty simple if you already know about it, but he deciphered that and that earned him the Nobel Prize in 1909. And this work provided the theoretical foundation for understanding catalytic processes across industry and biology, and the latter is so important, especially today, because catalysis is what most of those important proteins called enzymes do. So this is their function in biology, and that is probably the most important function, because some of the reactions, biochemical reactions, would not even take place without that catalytic contribution. It's pretty cool.
It always seemed to me a little bit like magic. Because it helped, well, of course it's not magic, but it feels like magic because it's there, it doesn't disappear, it doesn't get consumed, but it helps somehow.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's
Yeah. It becomes magic once you start understanding it, and that's for sure. And I don't claim to understand it in depth. I mean, and not from a scientific point of view, but, well, it still is exciting, even at the level that I understand it. So, beyond his research, Ostwald was a masterful organizer and educator, and that brings us to why, apart from his contributions to science, he is worth talking about in TWISH. So, he founded the influential, I'm going to attempt this, Zeitschrift für Physikalische Chemie. So it's a journal of physical chemistry, which was a peer-reviewed journal back in 1887, and he edited the first 100 volumes himself. That's quite a lot of work. His comprehensive textbooks, beginning with the Lehrbuch der Allgemeinen Chemie in 1884, educated generations of chemists worldwide. That's quite a contribution there. The Leipzig Institute, under Ostwald's leadership, became an international center for physical chemistry, attracting students who would later become Nobel laureates, including his former students Arrhenius, Van Hoff, and Nernst. All of them are specifically named in some of the processes and equations that chemistry uses. So they became very big names. And after retiring from active research in 1906, Ostwald became deeply involved in philosophy, developing his so-called energetics theory, which is a worldview that considered energy as the only fundamental reality. He also pursued color theory, working to establish scientific principles for color standardization and harmony. So it really became more of a philosophical kind of work that he engaged in later in his life. But he was remarkably productive throughout his career. He published over 500 research papers, 45 books, and 5,000 reviews.
Wow.
Even with today's standards, it's pretty good for a lifetime. And he died on April the 4th, 1932 at his estate Landhaus Energy in Großboden, Saxony. So I think his legacy is a pretty amazing one that extends far beyond his laboratory discoveries. His vision of physical chemistry as a unifying discipline helped transform chemistry from a collection of empirical practices into a rigorous science based on fundamental physical principles. Thank you very much for your contribution, sir. Herr. I don't know, is that how we say it? So the 2nd of September marks the birthday of Wilhelm Friedrich Ostwald, one of the fathers of physical chemistry.
Happy birthday.
So, let's move on to finding out what's been going on as of late in Europe.
Yes, unfortunately, we've often had reason to talk about buying unregulated substances and quote-unquote medicine online. So that's generally a bad idea. We've established that. However, maybe sometimes...
you mean not talking about this is a bad idea, but doing it, yeah.
Doing it is a bad idea. But sometimes, of course, when you do that, you may not really be aware that you're doing something that is dangerous. But here's an example. Apparently in the UK, and probably elsewhere too, I guess, there are quite a few shady sellers of Botox jabs. So for beauty purposes. So what is Botox then? I think most of us are aware of it. It's used cosmetically to reduce age wrinkles. That's what you hear about mostly. But Botox, or botulinum toxins, and there are a few variants, are among the most potent toxins that we know of, and that is dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. It's a neurotoxic protein produced by the bacterium Clostridium botulinum and related species. And intoxication can happen naturally as a result of you get it into a wound or as an intestinal infection. But in safe quantities, and if it's administered correctly, Botox can also be used to treat a number of medical conditions. And it does so by relaxing muscles that are hyperactive or overactive. It induces a form of paralysis, you can say, which can be beneficial in certain circumstances, but as I said, it's very toxic, so be careful. So if you get too much of this, Botox can cause a rare and potentially fatal illness. This disease begins with weakness, blurred vision, feeling tired, you have trouble speaking. It may then be followed by weakness in the arms, chest muscles and legs. Vomiting, swelling of the abdomen, and diarrhea may occur. So not nice. So normally this botulism is caused by bacterial infection in the stomach of small children. That's very rare in adults, but it happens with small children. But in adults it can come from food, wounds and inhalation. And now we come to the thing, also if you get injected by Botox and it's not handled correctly. Since it is more of a cosmetic thing, I think people not always think about this as a medical procedure, but of course it is. But more and more common now is that quacks and maybe some well-meaning people, but incompetent people, they ordered Botox online and then they sell their services to people who want a cosmetic thing in your face or wherever. And they, you want to look younger. That's very common, I guess. But this goes wrong sometimes. In total, 41 people in the UK are suspected to have come down with botulism between 1st of June and 6th of August this year. So over just 2 months, 41 people got ill, and this affects the nervous system and it can cause paralysis if it's untreated. So the Medicines and Health Products Regulatory Agency, the MHRA in the UK, is cracking down on the trade of unlicensed products containing botulinum toxin. Anyone caught selling and supplying unlicensed Botox risks up to 2 years in prison and what they call unlimited fines, quote unquote. I don't know exactly because I'm not a legal expert, but you can get a lot of fines. So that's how I read it. And I understand that some people turn to these frauds, probably not realizing the risks, because getting surgery or treatment for aesthetic reasons, that's probably a hassle to get. You need to get the doctor's approval and register with NHS, and perhaps you think it takes too much time, it's difficult, and it's easier just to fix an appointment with these quacks and get it done. But as I've said, it's dangerous. Don't do it. It's not worth the risk. A spokesperson for the British Association of Plastic, Reconstructive and Aesthetic Surgeons, the BAPRAS, had this to say, quote, botulinum toxin is a prescription-only medicine that should be administered in a clinical environment by qualified healthcare professionals. When used improperly, it can cause devastating and even life-threatening complications, end quote. Yeah. So yeah, there are no quick fixes, people. And if it's just a few wrinkles, I mean, I shouldn't judge anybody, but maybe you can just leave them.
Yeah, and just learn to live with them, because that's the normal way of life. As you get older, you get more wrinkles.
Yeah. Yeah, but I understand the attraction, I guess. But then do it through the formal, correct channels.
Yeah. Okay. What is it you're using?
What I'm using?
Yeah.
I have natural wrinkles, thank you very much.
Oh, nice. Okay. Let's move on to a bit of a different topic that researchers from Ireland tried to tackle, and that is memory fallibility. So imagine a he said, she said kind of scenario in a sexual assault case. 2 people on a date later at odds over whether it was consensual or not, what ended up happening. So until now, courtroom discussions usually went down in a way that especially defendants tried to use expert witnesses who could point out that memories are fragile, and they were trying to put the victim into a position that their statements are diminished somewhat because of a fragile memory. They could just be wrong in remembering what happened. So everyone understood that eyewitnesses were not necessarily reliable when it comes to descriptions of situations or people. So that was always pointed out. But for some reason, the defendants, who are, well, in many cases, the perpetrators of the wrong actions, were not assumed to be having a fragile memory that cannot be reliable as a witness. So that is very interesting how that wasn't the case for a long, long time. But this piece of research seems to be dealing with that. it seems like both the accused and the complainant are equally vulnerable to false memories, which is not a surprise for skeptics, I think, because we know that our memories can be falsified and can be changed and completely manipulated. But it's good to finally see that being equally the case for both the accused and the complainant. So the study was published in Scientific Reports, and the researchers from University College Dublin and University College Cork recruited 1,341 online participants to participate in 3 experiments. Participants watched a first-person video of a date, then were randomly told they were either the complainant, the person filing a sexual assault charge, or the accused, denied the charge. All were later exposed to misleading so-called witness statements containing false details about what happened. In study 1, each participant received the same neutral misinformation. Well, neutral misinformation is an interesting concept, but still. 2 false details and 2 control items. Before answering open-ended memory questions, the results were clear. Those exposed to misleading details recalled significantly more false information, regardless of their assigned role. Both were equally wrong about some of the details. The next study, the second study, tailored misinformation to fit either the complainant's version, making assault seem more likely, or the accused's version, casting doubt on the allegation. Half of the participants were aware of their role, half were not. So I really like the fact that they took care of the control as well. Yet both groups accepted congenial misinformation equally, showing no advantage for either role or for role awareness in this study either. And there was a third study as well. It refined the approach by replacing open-ended questions with multiple choice memory tests. So that's already pointing in the direction of some kind of leaning, right? Because this reduced ambiguity when it came to the end result of what people were believing or what they were saying. Once again, a strong misinformation effect emerged, with neither complainant nor accused showing greater resilience to that misinformation. So there were no significant interactions between role awareness or gender of the date character. So it looks like it just affects everyone, regardless of what their role, what their gender or anything is. This is pretty significant, I think. And these robust findings basically challenge the courtroom bias that only victims' memories are suspect. The authors caution that courtroom expert witnesses often focus on the frailty of complainants' recollections, overlooking the equal vulnerability of defendants. They urge greater awareness among legal professionals because they say memory distortion cuts both ways. While the study uses fictional scenarios, its implications, I think, are very profound. It calls for balanced expert testimony and highlights the reconstructive nature of memory under social and emotional influences. So I think future research should explore real-world settings in this as well. Because it's one thing to put the whole concept into a fictional scenario, but developing strategies to mitigate misinformation and its effects across all parties will have to be done on the basis of real-world scenarios as well.
This is very interesting and not surprising, as you say. We know, skeptics, we know that memories are really bad. As recording devices, we are not functioning very well. And I think there's one thing that they didn't look into in this study, which also complicates things, and that is motivated reasoning. If you are accused, you will do anything really in your head to try to explain to yourself that you didn't do anything wrong. So that steers your memory in a certain direction. You really have a good reason to feel that, no, I didn't do that. I could never have done that. That would have been bad. I did this instead, or whatever the situation can be. But your memory is very fallible. Have you ever witnessed in a court situation, Anders?
No.
Because I did that maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I was a witness to a crime. It wasn't a very serious crime, but it was a theft. A theft of police uniforms from a police car. So you know roughly that. So, and I was We called the police. We saw this happening, and the police was very happy. So they took our statements. My mistake then is that I did not write down my statement for my own recollection. They interviewed me over the telephone or something. I was not the major witness, but I was a witness. And then it took 2 years before the actual trial happened. And then I was called as a witness. And then I tried to, they asked me in court, what did you see? And I got the collar of somebody's pants wrong. And so the defendant, the lawyer for the defendant, was very key on that. Well, when you were interviewed after the thing, you said that the collar of the pants was this, and now you're saying what? What can we believe? So he's, of course, trying to cast doubt on
dismantle everything that you say.
Yes, and rightly so. And I, being a good skeptic, I said, well, you should believe what I said right after the fact. That's 2 years ago. We know that people's memories are bad, so you should go for what I said
Nice.
2 years ago. They still got away, this guy. I'm pretty sure this guy was guilty, but he got away in the end. Anyway, that was my own anecdote about this being confronted with my own fallible memory. If this happens again, I will write down my first recollection, because my recollection 2 years later is not reliable.
Yeah. But it's very important what you say about motivated reasoning, and I think this piece of research did not even try to take that into account, because that would have complicated things.
It was out of scope for this thing,
yeah, exactly. For the scope was that randomly assigned roles in a simulated scenario could not generate that much motivated reasoning anyway, because it was role play basically, so it's not that deep, but the effect was there regardless of who stood for what, and that was the important finding in this research.
All right, so Andras, not only do we misremember things, but we have messed up, it seems, on this podcast, or rather not too much, but we have missed an important piece of news, at least I have. Back in January last year, 2024, I celebrated that the then health minister of Germany, Karl Lauterbach, declared that Germany would stop funding homeopathy. And that, of course, was a good thing. And he said he would do that, and we gave him a really right award for this. But what I've missed, and what I now understand, is that in March the same year, just 2 months later, he quietly dropped this proposed change. Apparently without any official explanation, as I understand it. It just petered out. Let's not do it. So, and nothing has happened in Germany, and that's very disappointing. And Lauterbach is no longer in office, of course. As of May this year, 2025, the new health minister is called Nina Warken. She is of the CDU, the Christlich-Demokratische Union Deutschlands, or the Christian Democratic Union of Germany. One of the big dominant party for many years. Oh, there are many parties in Germany, but this is one of the big ones. Angela Merkel was part of that, or probably still is. Anyway.
She might be evoked again on this podcast.
Okay. Call forward. Okay, very good. But, so this is not good. So homeopathy is still being funded in Germany. No change has happened, but luckily we have the INH, the Informationsnetzwerk Homöopathie. So these organizations are the Information Network Homeopathy. Sorry,
I'm just laughing at the way you said it.
Yeah, of course. So they are related or associated with the German skeptics, the GWP. They're not formally part of it, I think, but they are collaborating. And they have now composed an open letter to Nina Warken, and basically saying, what the fuck? What's happening? What's going on? And then they list all the reasons for homeopathy to be defunded, and all the science that clearly says it's not working, and how about getting it done now, please, Nina, do it. More specifically, the INH points to 2 things that should change. Homeopathy in Germany benefits from 2 special legal regulations that need to be changed. The privilege of being granted medical status without scientific proof of efficacy. This is the Section 38 of the German Medicines Act. and also the catalogue of Section 11, Paragraph 6 of the Social Code Book 5. I have no idea what that is, but it's something that regulates this, and it enables reimbursement of homeopathic services by statutory health insurance funds. And those two things should go, and it should be fixed ASAP. And hopefully Nina Varken will listen to the INH. I'm not so hopeful, but we can hope still.
She should.
She should,
Definitely
especially,
should.
I mean, if you say you have something, and I repeat myself, but the privilege of being granted medical status without scientific proof of efficacy. That is not a sentence that should ever happen for anything. If you can't prove that something works, especially in homeopathy where there's no real plausibility.
Whatever medicinal principle is, should avoid that.
Yeah. So don't do that, Germany.
Any scientific principle.
And I wonder, maybe we should get Karl Lauterbach on the show here and ask, what happened to your so good intentions? He probably was overruled by someone.
Yeah. And I imagine there's pretty strong lobbying going on by homeopaths in Germany. It's pretty big in Germany, homeopathy.
Yes, and it has a good reputation. Despite all the information we try to get out and the INH try to get out, people just have always used homeopathy because their mothers did, and their mothers did, or fathers did,
but that is very difficult to tackle. We see that here in Hungary as well. That a lot of those things, not only homeopathy, but other myths and misconceptions, they are so difficult to get rid of because it's ingrained in society now. It's impossible to get rid of.
All right, I have more political shenanigans to report on, Anders.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm afraid we have to talk about Nigel Farage again. He already has a really wrong award to his credit, and that was just last month. So... so now he's at it again. He's not going to get a second really wrong. He maybe should have, but he got one very recently. But I'm going to report on this anyway. So Reform UK, which is his party, and let's not forget that Reform UK is currently the party with the highest poll numbers in the UK. They are about 30%.
That scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, it is. Not good. Anyway, that party, the party with the largest support in the UK, has declared that it would take UK out of the European Convention of Human Rights, the ECHR, if they got into power, and they would withdraw from other international agreements as well in that context. And the reason for this, they say, is to enable a program of mass detention and deportation of asylum seekers. So they're waving the scary thing. Oh, lots of foreigners, we don't trust them and we should be able to get rid of them. So this thing should go. So that stops us from treating people they want to take away people's rights, basically. It's just very populistic, of course. We've mentioned this before. It's not based on fact and rational ideas. It's to deflect from the real problems and blame potential issues on the loosely defined them as opposed to us. And that's always bad. But it's worse than this, because leaving the European Human Rights Convention does not just endanger the rights of foreigners and immigrants. It endangers everybody. And as Humanist UK points out, quote, withdrawing from the ECHR and other international human rights agreements would not only strip protections from refugees and asylum seekers, but would also dismantle safeguards that protect every person in the UK. The Human Rights Act and the ECHR guarantee basic freedoms we all can rely on, such as the right to life, freedom of expression, privacy, and a fair trial, end quote. So yeah, this is, I don't want to do a slippery slope argument, but this is really according to the fascist playbook. You take away people's right by blaming the threat from them, the others. But you pull away the rights of people, and that makes it much easier to do whatever you want later on. This is just one part of it, and it may sound appealing to parts of the public, but it is what happened in Germany and Italy in the 1930s, and it's it's happening in other places as well. We have those tendencies in the US, in Hungary, Andras, Slovakia, and a number of other places. Yeah, you appeal to people's tendency to find a scapegoat or something for your issue or injustice, or real or perceived. And in the long run, it is a threat to democracy itself. So
it is indeed.
Yeah. Humanist's UK Director of Public Affairs and Policy, Richie Thompson, commented also on this, and he said, quote, "This alarming proposal would strip away rights long protected in the UK. Leaving the ECHR would not only imperil the safety of refugees and asylum seekers, but also undermine the basic rights of us all. Human rights are universal and indivisible. They are not privileges for the few, but protections for everyone." End quote. Hear, hear.
Hear, hear. When it comes to quotes, whenever I hear anything about Nigel Farage, the quote that comes to mind is from, you remember Tropic Thunder? Kirk Lazarus, when he says, "Man, never go full retard."
I never saw that film. Sorry.
Never saw that.
No,
film.
never saw it.
Okay, but it's become like a thing, that sentence.
Yeah.
Never go full retard.
Yeah, but it's a bit of a problematic expression as well. You shouldn't talk about retards.
I know, but you should see the movie and then you'll understand what it's all about.
Okay.
Because it's the meaning of all this is just don't overdo it, man. So you can be an idiot, but you can overdo that too. And but apparently Nigel Farage doesn't care about that, and he's not paying for that. I mean, he seems to be gaining ground with all that idiocy, and that scares the shit out of me.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
I'm not surprised that there are idiots like him. What scares me is that people listen to him and to others. Yeah,
exactly.
It's amazing.
These people should be marginalized in a healthy society.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think that is a state of health of a lot of societies in the world that shows that there are big issues, man. Okay, so we've heard enough of idiocies, so why don't we find out who's been really right lately?
Yes. All right, okay. More politics, but positive this time.
Nice.
Yeah, we have to find some positive examples somewhere. Of course, some politicians are terrible, but there are a few that can stand up for science and rational thinking, apparently. Pedro Sánchez is the current Prime Minister of Spain, and we talked about Spain's terrible fires and climate change related problems as late as 2 episodes ago. It comes up. It's been a terrible summer in Spain from a climate point of view. Now, Sánchez is the Prime Minister and also the leader of PSOE, Partido Socialista Obrero Español, or the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party. Well, I think I got away with that. But
impressive.
Regardless, last Sunday he announced a 10-point plan to prepare the country for the climate emergency, warning, quote, "If we don't want to bequeath our children a Spain that is grey from fire and flames, or a Spain that is brown from floods, then we need a Spain that is greener," end quote. And a very nice use of the word bequeath there in the middle. I doubt he said this in English, but I only had access to the English translation. So, yeah. And we like a good word here in the ESP. Sánchez said August's heatwave-fueled wildfires, which are the worst ever seen in Spain, showed that immediate action must be taken to mitigate the effects of the climate crisis. He went on to say, quote, "Climate change kills. It kills. And that's why we have to be aware of everything it represents in terms of insecurity and in terms of the risks it poses to our lives." Quote, "The climate change denial that is coming from an important part of society and which is growing as a result of the lies spread on social networks by some members of our political class is as incomprehensible as it is worrying," end quote. So he proposed a series of initiatives, including a state civil protection agency to coordinate crisis responses, a network of climate refuges across the country, and a rethink of forest management and land use. Other measures included is a, quote, "state pact to address the climate emergency," end quote, and to include funds to prepare for and rebuild after climate change-related disasters. And it goes on. A very good initiative. Of course, he's a politician. Of course, he says things, and then what happens. We will see. Hopefully, he can live up to this. And I don't want to take political sides here. And I actually don't know too much about Pedro Sánchez as a politician, as maybe I should do. But at least, in this case, he's saying the right things. And I hope he will manage to live up to it. And for that, Pedro Sánchez, Prime Minister of Spain, receives this week's award for being really right.
Oh, and it's well deserved. So thank you very much. And thank you too, Pontus. Mm-hmm. That brings us to the end of this week's episode, but that has to be marked by a quote. And since we've talked so much about politicians and their attitudes towards science this week, I'd like to invoke Angela Merkel here, who wasn't only the leader of the Christian Democratic Union between 2000 and 2018, but she served as Chancellor of Germany from 2005 to 2021. And so far she's the only woman to have had that office. But the other interesting thing about her, from a scientific point of view, is that she has a very solid background in science because she holds a doctorate in particle physics. So quite a bright woman.
Indeed.
And I always felt about her that she didn't really put that into the equation enough. When it came to arguments, she was a bright, well-educated person, well-trained in physics, that should have had a bit of a weight in her argument. But she never really used that. But there was a bit of a campaign at some point when she tried to encourage people to go into science. And that's where she said the following. You can abolish many things, but not gravity, not the speed of light, and other facts.
Yeah.
Short and sweet.
There are certain things you can't escape, no matter how much you want it.
Yeah. Yeah. And denying facts is not a bright thing to do.
No, that's very futile. That never ends well.
Never. Okay, but I really hope that this podcast, at least this episode, ends well, because we have come to the conclusion of it. And I'd like to thank you, Pontus.
Thank you.
And many, many thanks to our listeners as well for tuning in. Please keep doing so and leave a review. And until next week, goodbye.
Hej då.
Visslat. This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@TheESP.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu. Follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social. Like us on Facebook or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
An independent weekly show sits. Happy birthday to you. Oh, nice. Okay. You don't look your age.
I don't act my age. That's worse.
Oh, you don't act your age. Okay, that's worse. Okay, that's none of my business. I mean, it's not my concern. All right. Why don't we find out who's been really wrong lately?
Actually, it's really right.
It's really right. Okay.
I forgot to change it. So do that again. And in terms of the risks it poses to... Get it together. The risks it poses to our lives.